The difference was remarkable. One completed Boyd Coddington pickup later sold for $374,000. That comparison revealed something important. Collectors weren't dismissing unfinished projects. They were assigning real value to the work already completed while recognizing the additional worth of Boyd's finished vision. His name alone had become an asset. Instead of losing value over time, many of his creations continued appreciating long after his death. But perhaps the strongest example was still to come. A custom 1948 Cadillac known as El Dorado became another powerful reminder of Boyd's lasting influence. The car began as an ordinary post-war Cadillac before being completely transformed through years of handcrafted metal shaping and custom fabrication. Boyd worked on the project during his lifetime, and it was later completed by his son. When it reached a major collector car auction, it sold for $802,500. That wasn't simply another expensive automobile. It was proof that Boyd's creations had entered the world of investment-grade collectibles. When you step back and look at the numbers, the pattern becomes impossible to ignore. 7 AMBR championships, $500,000 custom builds during his career, completed vehicles selling for hundreds of thousands of dollars years after his passing, even unfinished projects commanding impressive prices. Together, they show that Boyd Coddington wasn't just building hot rods. He changed the way collectors viewed custom cars forever. And suddenly, the garage itself takes on a completely different meaning. That famous shop in La Habra wasn't valuable because it sat untouched after Boyd died. It mattered because every award-winning build, every groundbreaking design, every handcrafted panel, and every unforgettable custom passed through those walls. The tools weren't just tools. They were the instruments behind some of the most celebrated custom cars ever created. The unfinished projects weren't forgotten leftovers. They were physical evidence of a career that reshaped an entire industry. In the end, Boyd Coddington's garage wasn't a mystery hidden behind locked doors. It was the final chapter of a remarkable legacy. Inside those walls lived the history of a builder who won the industry's highest honor 7 times, transformed custom cars into collectible works of art, and left behind machines that continue to command extraordinary prices decades later. The real secret was never the dust collecting inside the garage. The real secret was that every inch of that building preserved the story of a man whose influence still defines the custom car world today. There will never be another era quite like the one Boyd Coddington helped create. The classic machines he transformed are becoming rarer every year, and the man behind some of the world's most famous custom cars has been gone since 2008. But after his passing, one question refused to go away. What was left inside the garage where so many legendary builds were born? When those doors finally opened, people expected dust and forgotten tools. What they found instead told a much bigger story. Boyd Coddington wasn't just another custom car builder. He became one of the biggest names the hot rod world had ever seen. His shop earned an incredible 7 America's Most Beautiful Roadster Awards, a record that still stands today. Winning that honor once is enough to define a career. Boyd did it 7 separate times, proving that his work wasn't luck. It was the result of relentless skill, precision, and standards few others could match. But how did one small California shop rise above the entire industry? His workshop became famous because every vehicle that rolled out of it looked like rolling artwork. Judges examined every detail, from craftsmanship to originality, and Boyd's creations kept coming out on top. His success eventually attracted television cameras, and shows like American Hot Rod gave millions of viewers a front-row seat to the pressure and perfection inside his business. Suddenly, the garage wasn't just a workplace. It became one of the most recognizable custom car shops in America. But what made that building so special? Walk through the shop, and every corner tells a story. The welding tables, custom jigs, and handmade tools weren't ordinary equipment. They were the same tools used to create championship-winning cars. Every workbench showed years of careful craftsmanship. Every mark on the concrete floor reflected decades of projects pushed toward perfection. Plenty of garages are clean and organized, but very few become places where history is made. And that's where things become even more interesting. Boyd wasn't simply building cars. He was creating machines collectors would eventually treat like fine art. By the mid-1990s, a single custom build from his shop could cost as much as $500,000. That wasn't just because of expensive parts. Every panel, bracket, and stitch of upholstery was made by hand for one customer. Nothing came off an assembly line. Every project was unique, and buyers were willing to wait years for the finished result. But what justified such an enormous price? His business started modestly in Stanton, California, before growing into a much larger facility in La Habra. As demand increased, so did the size of the operation. More skilled fabricators joined the team. Better equipment filled the shop. Bigger commissions followed. Before long, the garage looked less like a repair shop and more like a luxury manufacturing studio where every vehicle became a handcrafted masterpiece. Yet the real value inside those walls wasn't only the finished cars. The equipment itself carried tremendous worth. Specialized tools, custom-built fixtures, stacks of aluminum, unfinished bodies, and rare parts represented years of investment. Nothing inside that shop was random clutter. Every item had been purchased or created for a purpose. Every unfinished build represented future value waiting to be completed. That meant when Boyd passed away, the garage instantly became something far more important than an empty building. So what happened after the man at the center of it all was suddenly gone? Boyd Coddington died on February 27, 2008. Overnight, the biggest question wasn't about his next project. It was whether the business could continue without the man whose name was on the front door. Unlike a dealership, every project inside his shop depended on Boyd's vision. Clients weren't just buying a custom car. They were buying Boyd's creativity, reputation, and personal touch. Remove that one person and everything changed. But what happened to the unfinished cars sitting inside? Some projects remained incomplete when he died, leaving collectors wondering whether they should be finished or preserved exactly as Boyd had left them. In the collector world, history matters almost as much as craftsmanship. An unfinished Boyd project wasn't simply an abandoned car. It became part of his story. Some enthusiasts believed those vehicles should be completed. Others believed they had become historical artifacts frozen in time. The debate continued for years. Then the market gave its own answer. Several unfinished 1940 Ford Customs eventually crossed the auction block. Even without being completed, buyers paid serious money for them. One sold for $57,200. Another reached $49,500. A third climbed all the way to $81,400. These weren't finished show cars. They were projects that still carried Boyd's fingerprints through their custom frames, handcrafted metalwork, and unmistakable design. That raises an obvious question. If unfinished cars were worth that much, what were completed ones bringing?